Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan, a warrior prince known for his loyalty to David, who was destined to become king. Jonathan and David shared a friendship that transcended politics and personal ambition. They bonded over a shared faith in God and mutual respect. Jonathan knew that David would one day ascend to the throne, replacing his own father Saul. Yet Jonathan pledged to protect David, and in return, David promised to care for Jonathan's family if anything should happen. The years passed, and the kingdom grew tense under Saul's strained leadership. The Philistines, Israel's enduring enemies, posed a constant threat. In a devastating battle on Mount Gilboa, Saul and his sons, including Jonathan, were killed. This defeat was more than a loss for Israel. It marked the end of an era. News of their deaths sent ripples of fear through the royal household. The fall of Saul's house was imminent, and in the midst of the panic, Mephibosheth's life changed forever. Mephibosheth was only 5 years old when the news of his father and grandfather's deaths reached their household. In the chaos, a nurse took the young boy and fled, fearing that the victors would come to eliminate any remaining heirs to the throne. In her haste, she stumbled and Mephibosheth fell. The accident left him crippled in both feet, a tragic twist that would shape the rest of his life. Unable to walk, Mephibosheth became a hidden figure, a forgotten prince now dependent on others for care. He was taken to the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lo-debar, a desolate place whose name meant no pasture. It was a fitting description for the young man's circumstances. Isolated, cut off from the glory of his lineage, and living far from the reach of the palace he once could have called home. Meanwhile, David's path to kingship was fraught with challenges. He mourned the deaths of Saul and Jonathan sincerely, despite Saul's attempts to kill him. David became king, first ruling over Judah and later uniting all of Israel under his reign. His victories were many, and his leadership brought prosperity and stability to the nation. Yet David's heart was stirred one day as he remembered his bond with Jonathan. The memory of their friendship and the promise they shared echoed in his mind. True to his word, David asked, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" It was an extraordinary question from a king, especially considering that typical practices of the time often involved eliminating any threats from former dynasties. Ziba, a former servant of Saul's house, was summoned. "There is still a son of Jonathan. He is crippled in both feet," Ziba said, revealing the existence of Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth's life of obscurity came to an abrupt end when King David's messengers arrived. One can only imagine the fear and confusion that filled his heart. Summoned before the king, Mephibosheth must have wondered if his past as Saul's grandson would seal his fate. When he was brought before David, Mephibosheth bowed low in deference. "At your service," he said, his voice perhaps trembling with uncertainty. But instead of anger or vengeance, David's words were full of compassion. "Don't be afraid. I intend to show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." The unexpected grace stunned Mephibosheth. He replied, "What is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me?" It was a phrase heavy with self-deprecation, revealing how far his self-worth had fallen over the years of living in obscurity. David's promise was not just words. Mephibosheth was granted a place of honor at the king's table, an act that symbolized full restoration and acceptance. Eating at the king's table signified that he was now part of David's household, treated as one of his own sons. The land that had belonged to Saul was also returned to Mephibosheth, and Ziba, along with his 15 sons and 20 servants, was appointed to work the land and ensure that Mephibosheth would have an inheritance. Despite his physical limitations, Mephibosheth's life changed dramatically. From a forgotten figure in Lo-debar, he became a respected member of the royal court. His presence at the table was a powerful testament to David's faithfulness to Jonathan and his understanding of mercy. The story of Mephibosheth is rich with themes of loyalty, grace, and restoration. David's actions were not just acts of kindness, they were demonstrations of covenant loyalty, hesed in Hebrew, a steadfast, loving commitment that went beyond obligation. Through his relationship with Mephibosheth, David reflected God's kindness, showing that mercy and compassion can bring light even into the darkest places of life. Mephibosheth's tale reminds us that no matter how lost or broken we may feel, restoration is possible. His story paints a vivid picture of grace, where the forgotten and overlooked are seen and valued. It's a reminder that true greatness in leadership comes not just from power, but from acts of kindness and loyalty that honor past promises and uplift the downtrodden. Mephibosheth remained loyal to David even during turbulent times, such as Absalom's rebellion. During this time, Mephibosheth faced significant challenges as the king he revered fled Jerusalem to escape Absalom's forces. Ziba, his servant, took advantage of the chaos and misrepresented Mephibosheth to David, claiming he had stayed behind in hopes of reclaiming Saul's throne. This act of betrayal tested Mephibosheth's faith and trust in those around him. When David returned victoriously, Mephibosheth met him, disheveled and visibly distressed from days of mourning. His appearance spoke louder than words, and when David questioned his loyalty, Mephibosheth's response was humble. "Let Ziba take everything, now that my lord the king has returned safely." This statement not only proved his faithfulness, but also emphasized his deep gratitude for being alive and counted among David's court. As Mephibosheth settled into his new life at King David's table, he began to witness firsthand the king's governance and wisdom. Each meal served as a reminder not only of the generosity shown to him, but also of the precarious nature of grace and power in a royal court. Surrounded by nobles, warriors, and advisors, Mephibosheth's presence was a testament to David's commitment to integrity and loyalty, drawing the silent admiration and subtle curiosity of those around him. Mephibosheth's son, Micah, also grew up in this atmosphere, benefiting from the unusual favor extended to his father. This allowed Mephibosheth to reclaim some of the hope that had been lost after his accident and the fall of Saul's house. His relationship with Micah was filled with stories of Jonathan's bravery and faith, instilling in the boy a sense of heritage and identity despite their complicated past. Over time, Mephibosheth became a quiet observer of the court's politics and the dynamics that shifted as David's rule expanded. He witnessed David's victories, the construction of Jerusalem's walls, and the Ark of the Covenant being brought to its place of honor. Each event reminded Mephibosheth of the stark contrast between his early years in Lo-debar and his current life in the heart of Jerusalem's spiritual and political activity. Despite his privileged position, Mephibosheth was not immune to moments of doubt and introspection. He would sometimes sit alone, staring out at the city, thinking about the path that led him here. The haunting memories of his fall and the years spent hidden away in Lo-debar never entirely left him. Yet those moments also deepened his gratitude. He realized that his restoration was more than an act of kindness. It was a powerful statement about redemption and God's mercy. The court of David was not without turmoil. Whispered rumors and political tensions often found their way to Mephibosheth's ears. He saw how the loyalty of many could waver with changing fortunes, but he also learned how steadfastness and humility could shield one's soul from the corrupting influence of power. These insights made him more devoted to David, whom he viewed as not just a king, but as a man who understood that true leadership meant lifting others up, even though society had forgotten. In his final years, Mephibosheth became a symbol of enduring loyalty and the unexpected ways that mercy could manifest. The story of the crippled prince who ate at the king's table was passed down as an example of both divine grace and the power of promises kept. His life inspired those who heard it to believe that, regardless of past suffering or current limitations, restoration was possible. The legacy of Mephibosheth was carried forward by his son, Micah, and his descendants, who remained part of the fabric of Israel's history. They bore witness to the fact that strength could be found in humility, and that one act of kindness could ripple through generations, touching countless lives. King David's commitment to Jonathan's son was more than a personal fulfillment of a vow. It was an enduring reminder that true kingship mirrored God's own character, compassionate, faithful, and ever willing to elevate the broken to a place of honor. Thank you for watching the inspiring story of Mephibosheth. If you enjoyed this animated journey of grace and redemption, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more biblical stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. Your engagement helps us bring more meaningful content to you. Join our community and be part of sharing these powerful stories.